Just imagine you deployed your Laravel application on hosting and suddenly users complain, login is broken, payments fail, emails don't send. This is too scary, right? That's why we need automated testing. Instead of manually checking every feature, your tests do the work for you. This will be fast, reliable, and repeatable. Hello everyone, I'm Umesh Rana and welcome back to the Programming Fields. Today I'm introducing a brand new series on Laravel 12 with Pest. And in this entire journey, we are going to learn how to test Laravel 12 application with Pest. The Pest is a modern testing framework that makes testing simple and fun. And here is the roadmap for today's session. First, we will understand what is testing, why is it important. Then we will look at different types of tests. Next, we will compare PHPUnit versus Pest. Further, we will do setup of Pest in Laravel 12 application. And finally, we will write both a unit test and a feature test. And lastly, we will wrap up with a recap and a small homework exercise for you. So let's start with what is testing. Testing means checking out our code or functionality to make sure it is working properly as per the expectation. So it is literally code that checks our code. Without tests, we rely on manual testing, clicking around in the browser to see if things work. That is slow and error prone. But on the other hand, automated tests are fast and repeatable, meaning we can perform it multiple times, and they serve as a safety net against bugs. Now there are two ways to test the code: manual testing and automated testing. In the manual testing, you click buttons, refresh pages, and check results yourself. But in the automated testing, you write code that runs those checks automatically. So automated tests are faster, repeatable, and catch bugs before your users do. So you can think of them as a safety net. That means every time when you change code, tests reassure you, yes, the app still works. For example, in a calculator application, we always want like 2 plus 2 is equals to 4. With a test in place, even if we change the code tomorrow, we will be confident that calculation still works. That is power of testing. Now we will talk about common types of tests in Laravel. So in Laravel, there are 4 common types of test. The first one is unit test. So the unit test is small, isolated pieces of code. For example, a function that calculates discounts, and this will be one individual code or functionality which can be tested independently. Next, we have the feature tests. So the feature tests are larger flows which may be like hitting routes, controllers, and databases. For example, if we are creating a new user through registration form, this type of test will be counted as feature test because we are testing one of the feature. Next, we have this integration test. So the integration test makes sure multiple parts work together, meaning we combine multiple features together and we test them. Example, let's say if we have a registration form, so when an user will register to the application, the registration triggers an event and sends a welcome email to newly registered user. In this type of testing, there are multiple functionalities involved from registering a user to sending email. So this will be counted as integration tests. Lastly, we have end-to-end test, which calls E2E. So these tests simulate what a real user will do in the browser. For example, just imagine testing a login system. So an end-to-end testing will actually open up a browser window, either headless or visible, and they will type email and password in the login form. And further, click the login button and then check if the user is redirected to the dashboard after successful login. In the Laravel world, we have tools like Laravel Dusk for browser automation. So that I will cover in some of our upcoming videos. But outside Laravel, there are some other tools like Cypress or Playwright. And these are very popular. So the main advantage is realism, where you are testing the application exactly as a user would experience it. But the trade-off is performance. End-to-end testing tests are usually slower and this require more setup and are a bit heavier to maintain. That is why developers often use a pyramid strategy, in which they write lots of unit tests which are faster than end-to-end testing. So E2E tests are your final safety check that test the entire system from backend to frontend to ensure everything works together smoothly. In this entire series, we will focus mostly on unit tests and feature tests. They cover most day-to-day Laravel needs. Now we will jump to the quick comparison between PHPUnit versus Pest. So from Laravel 10 onwards, and yes, in Laravel 12 too, Pest is the default testing framework. That does not mean PHPUnit is gone, but Pest is still built on top of PHPUnit. So everything PHPUnit could do is still possible using Pest. In fact, Pest simply gives us a better developer experience than PHPUnit. Now, if you look at this comparison table, PHPUnit requires you to create test classes and methods and then use assertion method like $this assert equals. But in other hands, Pest replaces that syntax with a modern minimal syntax, which is expect function, in which we will have to pass the input and further followed by to-be function that will check the result, which is so much easier to read and write. So when we talk about testing in Laravel 12, we will mainly use Pest, but it is very important to know that PHPUnit is still there working in the background. Now we will do a quick setup of Pest in Laravel 12 application. So for that, I will quickly jump to the terminal and I will install Laravel 12 fresh application. And I will install a fresh version of Laravel 12. So let's jump to the terminal and I will install Laravel 12 using Laravel installer. So I will type Laravel new and I will give the application name as Laravel Pest. Now at this moment, I won't go with any starter kit. I will go with the default none. And regarding the testing framework, here I will install Pest because we are going to follow Pest for this series. So I will go with Pest and I will hit enter. Now this is installing Laravel 12 application with Pest. So let's wait for a moment. And for the database, I will select SQLite by default. And all the migrations have been executed. Further, this is installing Laravel Pest. And yes, the installation has been completed. Now let's check out to this project folder, cd Laravel Pest. And I will open this in the VS Code editor. Yes, the project has been opened in the VS Code editor. Now at the initial step, let's check out the folder structure of this Laravel 12 application. So here we have this tests folder. This folder is responsible for creating and managing all the test things related to the application. And this comes by default with the Laravel installation. So currently we have installed Pest for the testing framework. So this has created this tests folder, and inside this, we have these following files and folders. Firstly, we have this feature folder in which this will contain all the feature tests. So regarding the feature test, we already discussed about the entire functionality test cases can be written inside this. And inside this feature test, we have a default test file created as example test.php. If we'll check out this has created a default test function for checking the homepage route. Okay, if /route is there, then this will return 200. Further, we have this unit folder. Inside this unit, again we have one more test file created for writing the unit test case. So in the unit test, we have one test case written as to check if that true is true, then it will return true. Regarding the test case writing, I will come to that next step. Firstly, let's check out the next file, which is pest.php. So whenever you will install Pest, this will create a pest.php file. So inside this, we have a few things written as Pest function, which will extend the test case class. And if we'll scroll down, we don't have much things inside this. Further, we have this testcase.php, in which we have one abstract class, which is extending base test case class. Now, before writing any test case, Firstly, let's run the default test case, which we have this unit test and one of the feature test. So in order to execute the test cases in Laravel, we have PHPUnit command. So let me clear this. And if I'll type PHPUnit command, and if you'll scroll to top, here in the available commands, we have this test command written. We have the description as this will run the application tests. Okay, so let's run this command. So I will type PHPUnit test. Let's hit enter. And this has executed the default test cases of the application, in which we have two test cases. This one is for unit test and this one is for feature test. And for every test case, we have this status as pass, because these two test cases have been passed. Further, we have this tests to passed, and this is showing the duration of executing this default test cases. So by default, these two test cases have been passed. Now let's navigate to the code editor again. And in the unit test, here I will just change the expect true to false. Okay. Now I will navigate to the browser and I will re-execute this test command in order to see what it will return. So now we can see when I have changed that output to false, this thrown error as this test case is failed, because this didn't match the exact expectation. So now in the result, we have one test failed and one test passed. And in the test case, here this has shown the error like this one is failed. So this is expecting true to be true instead of false. So now let's navigate to the code editor again. And as of now, I will just remove these folders like feature and unit. Okay. And I'm going to create a very first test case. So for that, I will create a new file using command line. So for this, we have command like PHPUnit make. So inside make, we have make test command, which is shown here. This will create a new class. Now let's create a very first test file here. So I will type PHPUnit make :test. And if you will hit enter, and this prompted like what should be the test name. So I just want to give a test name like health test. If I will hit enter, and now it asked which type of test would you like to create, meaning it should be feature or unit test. Firstly, I'll create unit test. So I will select unit and I will hit enter. And this has created a very first test file inside unit because we choose in unit test. Now if we'll check out that unit test file, so inside this test folder, this has created one folder as unit, and inside this has created this health test.php file. Now inside this, we can create our custom unit test. So in this test function, we have the first parameter that will define basically test name. So we can provide any meaningful name. That means it should define what we are going to write inside this function. So let's say I'm going to create a very first unit test. So let's suppose I'll give a name as application is healthy, and this will return true from here. Now if we'll navigate to the terminal, and if we'll execute PHPUnit test command now, this said test directory feature not found. That means by default, Laravel 12 expects both test cases like unit and feature test based on the PHPUnit configuration. But as of now, I have removed feature test from this directory, so we don't have the feature test as of now. Only I want to execute the unit test. So for that, I will navigate to this phpunit.xml file. Inside this, we have the test suites written for unit and feature. So as of now, I will just comment this test suite for the feature. So let's comment this. And if we'll navigate to the terminal again, now let's rerun this PHPUnit test command. And yes, now we are able to execute our first unit test, which is application is healthy, and the result is passed. Okay, and this took duration as 0.3 second. Now let's perform some other operation inside this unit test. So here I will write some calculation things. So for that I will write one more test as test, just like sum of two numbers works. Okay, and I will create one anonymous function just similar to the above test one, and I will write expect. Now inside this expect function I will pass one math operands and operators. So let's suppose I want to check 2 plus 3. Okay, and inside this should be output as 5, right? Now if we'll check this test, so let's re-execute this test command, and here this said 2 tests passed. The second one is sum of two numbers, this one got passed. Now let's do some changes inside this. Here we have given operand and operator like 2 plus 3, this should be 5. Now instead of 5, let's say I will change this to 6. I know this is not correct. Now based on this output, let's check the test case. So in the terminal, if I will rerun this PHPUnit test command, this thrown error as this failed asserting that 5 is identical to 6. Okay, that means somewhere there is error in the output or maybe in the input, right? So if we'll change this input to 3 plus 3, again this will 6, and this will pass this test case. If we'll check this, yeah, this got passed now. So this is a very basic test of unit. Now let's create one feature test. So for that, again I will create one file as PHPUnit make test command, and here I will have to provide the test name, and in the test name I will give a name like welcome page test, because I just want to test if our home page, that means the Laravel 12 welcome page, is accessible or not. So just in order to test that, I will create one test case. So let's give a name like welcome page test. Let's hit enter, and here let's select feature test, because we are going to test one feature, and this is not an individual test because we are going to check one functionality which is related to homepage accessibility. So let's hit enter, and this has created welcome page test inside feature folder. Now if we'll check out this, so here inside this test folder we have this feature folder, and there we have this welcome page test, and by default this has written this test case to check the home route. Now let's change this name to welcome page is accessible. Now in order to execute this feature test, we will have to enable that PHPUnit test suite. Without enabling that, it won't execute this. Let's test that without enabling that. So I will rerun this PHPUnit test command, and now we can see this has not included that feature test in this execution. So for that, let's enable this test suite of this feature test. Now if we'll navigate to the terminal and let's rerun this test, and yes, now we have total 3 tests passed, okay, in which we have 2 unit tests and 1 feature test. So in the feature test, we have this welcome page is accessible based on the given route as slash. So slash is representing to home route. Now if we'll check out the route inside routes web.php, yes, we have slash, that means the home route is there. Now let's say if I will change this route to slash welcome, and I want to update the test case inside this welcome page test. Now without changing this test case, if I will rerun this test, now this thrown error as slash, meaning the home route is not available. So this returned response status code 200 but received 404. That means that route does not exist in the system. And in the output, this field asserting that 404 is identical to 200. Now, accordingly, if we'll update this test case in order to check /welcome route, and if we'll retest this, let's hit enter, and yes, now all the test cases have been passed. So we have just written and passed our first unit test and feature test in Laravel 12. Now let's recap what we have learned so far in this episode. We learned what testing is, why it matters in Laravel. We covered unit, feature, integration and end-to-end tests in Laravel. Further, we compared PHPUnit versus Pest. Then we installed Pest in Laravel 12. We created our very first unit test and feature test. Now there is a homework for you. You can write a unit test that multiplies 2 into 5 equals to 10, and also write a feature test for a new route as /ping that should return pong as true. And just write in the comments, okay? Now in the next episode, we will dive deeper into unit test, feature test, and we will practice test-driven development by building a real-world project step by step. If this was helpful, hit that like button, subscribe the channel for the latest updates, and get ready. Testing in Laravel 12 is about to get fun.